You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Harry's wife. A pair of clowns. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Harry and his wife are a pair of clowns. He's a clown because he's a dimwit, and also because of the consequence of his ensnarement and his rampant emotional thinking, he's unable to see that he's being dragged around by his pink pods, by his handler, causing him to look like a grade A doofus. She's a clown because as a consequence of her brand of narcissism, that it has done excellent well at getting her into the position that she found herself in, but it struggles to keep her there. Basically, it isn't up to the job of maintaining a grip over so many people in such a high-profile way without repeatedly causing fuck-ups. Many people, of course, have observed, and I also have done so, that what she could have done was join the royal family, allow that institution to provide her with the support that it does, and that she could have had a privileged lifestyle of access to wealth, meeting lots of people, being seen in a good light, possibly with little changes here and there, bringing further modernisation to the royal family, but not fighting the institution itself. Instead, bolting it onto herself and her narcissism utilising it so that she can use that status and prestige and the support network that it provided to assert control over millions of people, and do so in a manner whereby she would be liked. It would enable her to draw massive amounts of fuel, the edifice of the royal family being behind her. The access to the institution itself and all that she would meet would provide her with a host of character traits to make her far more interesting than she actually is, far more likeable than she actually is, far more talented than she actually is. She would be given far more passes by people because she wouldn't be contradicting herself repeatedly. It would also allow access to lots of residual benefits, money, the facade, networks, and so forth. And whilst it may be the case that she would have always had some detractors, if her narcissism had embraced the institution rather than fought against it, then more people would like her. She wouldn't have so many people commenting about her, picking apart her lies, pointing out her inconsistencies and contradictions, and generally disliking her. All of which, of course, generates repeated threats to her control, and means that her life becomes more difficult because her narcissism has to repeatedly fight against all of these threats to control, which actually it keeps causing. For a narcissist of her ilk that is far less famous than her, that becomes less of a problem, because that individual is not under repeated scrutiny. A mid-range narcissist that lives in a nice house in a nice town and has a moderately sized fuel matrix, family members, numerous friends, colleagues, neighbours, etc., is much more able to assert control over those people. They're not going to scrutinise the behaviour of the narcissist to the same extent. They are less likely to face threats to their control because they're seen as a likeable person, so people get along with them. Of course, there'll be some children in the background that may suffer. There, of course, will be an intimate partner primary source that will suffer. But for the most part, the non-intimate secondary sources that are family and friends will see that person as kind and decent as a consequence of the fake cognitive empathy. Thus, that mid-range narcissist occupying moderate town isn't going to face as many threats to control, isn't going to see the facade cracking as often, and therefore will have a productive life in terms of controlling those people easily, the provision of fuel, decent enough character traits, and residual benefits. Sure, there will be threats to control on a daily basis, but nothing that is going to be anywhere near the level of extent and problem that Harry's wife faces. Thus, that middle-range narcissist is able to function in that environment. Harry's wife isn't able to function in the environment that she's been catapulted to because her narcissism isn't up to the job. So that in with her lack of decent cognitive function, it means that time and time again the facade cracks because there is a legion of press people and amateur sleuths on the internet who all too readily go scouring for information about the way that she's behaved in the past and then compares it to the way that she behaves now. looks at what she said in the past and what she says now, and points out the lies and contradictions. And there are so many people that dislike her because of her behaviours. And, of course, her narcissism wouldn't have needed to have responded by telling lies on an industrial scale. That mid-range narcissist in moderate town, of course they would tell lies, but they wouldn't have the reach of the lies of Harry's wife, and thus she wouldn't find herself in such a situation. She would be able to control people more readily. She would be able to assert control over them far more easily. But for Harry's wife, she's a clown. She's a clown because her narcissism got her into this position, but it hasn't been able to keep her in this position without causing repeated collateral consequences. And the result of all of this, and of course, the way that she's controlled the dim-witted Ginger Prince, is that their brand is failing. Even the left-leaning Guardian, which might ordinarily give them a slight pass, states, "How is brand Harry and Harry's wife faring in the United States? News just in. Not good." The article by Awa Mardawi states, "Is America finally getting bored of Harry and Harry's wife? It's starting to look that way. Only a few months ago, the pair were media darlings in the United States. Now they have become a bit of a joke." Well, I would suggest it's a lot of a joke. The animated sitcom South Park gave the first big blow to their stateside brand a couple of weeks ago, with an episode featuring the couple bearing an uncanny similarity to the Sussexes. In the episode, titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, the pair travel the globe with placards saying, "Stop looking at us," and chanting, "We want privacy." Harry's memoir Spare is parodied as Wah. The couple also get advice from a PR expert who tell them to portray themselves as victims. Not terribly flattering stuff, and as I've mentioned elsewhere, a huge blow to the status of Harry's wife. Now the comedian Chris Rock has taken aim at the couple in his new Netflix special, Selective Outrage. He dismissed Harry's wife's claims about racism in the royal family, saying some of that shit she went through was not racism, but in-law behaviour. He also joked about how it was odd Harry's wife seemed surprised by the fact the royal family might harbour archaic views. "It's the royal family. They're the original racists. They invented colonialism," Rock said. Polls also reflect a shift in US-based attitudes towards the pair. Their approval ratings have plummeted since the South Park episode, according to polling commissioned for Newsweek. Harry's popularity has dropped 48 points since December, and Harry's wife's is down 40. Now, Prince Andrew, the guy who palled around with a convicted sex offender, has higher US approval ratings than the Sussexes. Though, to be fair, that seems to be because fewer people in the United States know about Andrew's tawdry dealings than they do in the United Kingdom. Because Andrew isn't parading himself on the US media 24/7 like Harry and Harry's wife, it's easier for someone stateside to forget who he is. If only we all had that luxury. How are Harry and Harry's wife responding to this seeming shift in attitudes? Well, let's just say they haven't exactly put out a statement saying they think Rock and South Park are hilarious, and they love nothing more than laughing at themselves, ha ha ha. On the contrary, there were rumours that they were so upset by the South Park episode that they were considering legal action. While they're certainly fans of calling their lawyers, a representative for the couple told The Guardian that reports the pair might sue were baseless and boring. I'll tell you what's really boring: the never-ending pity-me-please performance the two are foisting upon us. As a staunch anti-royalist, I was sympathetic to the couple to begin with. My enemy's enemy is my friend and all that. But the constant oversharing, lack of boundary recognition, has jumped the shark. Particularly since it becomes more obvious by the day that their grievances are less to do with systemic inequality, correct, and more to do with feeling they didn't get a big enough slice of the born with a privileged pie. That, of course, is the fact that Harry's wife doesn't care about inequality. She just gives the appearance of caring. She only cares about what's in it for her vis-à-vis the prime aims. The article continues, come on. You can't go around complaining about how backwards the royals are while insisting that we plebs refer to you as Duke and Duchess. Harry's wife can. Her narcissism sees no issue with such hypocrisy. The writer continues, you want some credibility? Give up your stupid titles. Another unsolicited piece of advice for Duke and Duchess. Read the socioeconomic room. You may have noticed that eat the rich storylines are a big theme on television at the moment. From the latest season of Netflix You, to The White Lotus, to Succession. There are more rich people are awful sociopath storylines on the telly than you can shake a silver spoon at. This is not a weird coincidence. It's been noted that storylines about rich people tend to vary depending on the economic climate. In good times, on-scene obscene wealth can be enjoyable escapism. In bad times, it's more of a hate watch. And I don't need to tell you, the world is currently going through you need to take out a second mortgage to buy eggs sort of times. Finally, Harry, I know you weren't exactly the most committed student, but maybe pick up a history book. The US has something of a reputation for losing patience with British aristocrats. There we have the left-leaning Guardian slating the two of them, showing once again that an area that would perhaps give them some favour, which is admitted by the author of this piece, has turned against them. And it shows that they are a pair of clowns in their failure to recognise the way that the world is and continuing to bleat about their own supposed problems when actually they enjoy huge privilege. This is unsurprising, of course, in relation to Harry's wife, because she has no emotional empathy, and her cognitive empathy isn't up to the job, as I have explained. With Harry, he is thick, and therefore isn't able really to understand these things, and also, in fairness, has come from an environment where he was never exposed to having to go down and go down to the unemployment office and seek benefits. He's always come from a privileged lifestyle, and therefore, whilst that might not excuse it, it does explain his lack of understanding. Of course, his wife, believing that she's all things kind and empathic, ought to recognise all of this, but the fact that she does just underpins the nature of the fact that she is a narcissist. Clown 1 and Clown 2. Those are the Sussexes. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.